Hello, my dear students from the model Developmental Psychology 2. Welcome to our class number 7. Today, we will introduce a new period of development, adulthood. Adulthood can be divided in two main stages, early and middle adulthood. In this module, we will talk about these two periods together. First, what we'll do today is to discuss about some concepts related to adulthood. What is that thing of being an adult? And after that, we will talk and discuss about the adult's ecological map. Within the adult's ecological map, there are two important uh, aspects that we will discuss today: university and university life, and work and career. Let me remind you that this book that we have here, Development Across the Lifespan, is the recommended book to study for this part of the module. As I told you, uh, you should do some readings in order to learn more and to have a better grade. I provided you my notes. I'm providing the slides of the class. You have the videos online, and I'm available to help you. But nothing can substitute your own readings. For you to learn in the university, you need to do your own readings. And in the library, you have this book available, and this is indeed a very, very good book for you to study for this section of the class. I also prepared the vocabulary for you. Here you have the list of the most important words for those who have difficulties in English to prepare and to study in advance. And let's start to discuss about concepts on adulthood. About this, I introduce first the task number 14. This is something that I would like you to do these days before the class, and we will discuss that. I would like to know if you consider yourselves adults, if you think that you reach adulthood, and if so, I would like you to tell me what makes you being an adult, or in general, what you think that are the markers, the aspects that someone should have in order to be considered an adult. Uh, when we talk about adulthood, there is a new concept that some authors are introducing, that is the concept of emerging adulthood. This emerging adulthood is what we can call a bridge between adolescence and adulthood. And this should be exactly the period in which most of you should be, between 18 and 25. It is really, really interesting because it was made a study from Laura Burke asking people from your age if they would consider themselves adults, exactly the same way that I asked you in the previous exercise. And in a very interesting way, most of the participants in this study, in the period between 18 and 25 years old, they said, so about 60% of them said yes or no, that from one side I think I'm an adult, but from another side I think that I'm not an adult. So this being in between seems to be creating a new period or sub period of development inside adulthood. That is this emerging adulthood. This should be a moment in which young adults have more opportunities for exploration, have more autonomy, doesn't have to explain everything or to ask for permission to the parents for everything, but in which there are some aspects of being adults that are missing. And this is something that we will discuss on Monday. Three of the most consensual and accepted markers of adulthood are these three. Marriage. Marriage is one element, an important element that signs the commitment that someone is able to do with intimate relationships and to start to build their own family. And in many societies and for many people, this might be one important marker of transition of the transition of someone to be an adult. Another important marker for many people is career, the moment in which someone finishes the studies and starts to have their own job. As we will see in a while, career and work are really important aspects of being an adult, even for the identity of the person. And finally, and I think that most of you will recognize that, to have full economic independence, to have your own money and not to have to rely on the parents to survive will be another important marker to be an adult. So marriage and to build their own family, career and full economic independence might be important markers of what is being an adult. And indeed, when we talk about adulthood, we can divide these in three substages. We will talk specifically about late adulthood. We will talk about late adulthood in the last three classes specifically. And this is a very particular period of development to which we should pay lots of attention. This today and the next two classes, we will talk about early and middle adulthood. We could have specific classes for each of these periods because indeed we can consider that early adulthood from 18 to 40, including here emerging adulthood as a sub-period, and middle adulthood, they can be independent and different periods of development. But because we don't have time, we will talk about these two together in this part of the class. So, what is more relevant in the adult's ecological map? Don't forget that we have these four aspects when we talk about development. Ecological map, physical and perceptual development, cognitive development, and psychosocial development. Okay, so today, now let's talk a little bit about the ecological map. When we talk about ecological map in adults, one important aspect, and we will talk about this again later when you talk about late adulthood, but one important aspect in adulthood is related to life events. What happens in our life, some normative things, some things that are expected to happen in the life of adults are very important aspects of the ecological map. This factor of time and the things that happens in our environment in the ontological time of each individual. And here in the lives of adults, we have five important aspects. The first one, going to the university. Going to the university, as you know, in most of developed societies like Macau, it's one very important moment for young adults. Another aspect is the death of a parent. In the life of adults, most of adults are facing the death of their parents during this period of development. And this is a very important marker, a very important life event, because the adults will put their own life in a different perspective when their own parents die. More or less like, okay, my parents died, now next time it's my turn. And this makes people look at life in a completely different way. So this is also a very important life event. Another one is the starting of a first job. When people, adults, will start to work and to have the first salary, I really remember the moment I received my first salary. It was really an important moment for me, a moment in which I felt really a grown-up, that something changed in my life. Another important aspect is the birth of a child, or the birth of the first child. That is what we call the transition to parenting, when the moment in which we are now responsible for the life of someone, to be an adult and to be someone who has to be in charge of taking care of a small human being also changes the perspective that a person have about their own life. And finally, another important life event is to buy a house, to have our own place, to have a commitment with a bank to pay accounts and to have to pay the rent or to the bank to pay the mortgage of a house. These, of course, there are other important life events in the life of adults. For instance, I remember the driving license. The moment I got my driving license and I was allowed to drive my car, I felt really, really important on that moment. So the life of adults is made of important life events, things that happen or not, and that will affect our lives. And here I just highlighted the most important. So when you will be counselors or psychologists in the future, you also need to be attentive to the life events of people. What is happening in the life of these persons and how they are dealing with these different life events. Today, in this module, we'll talk a bit more about going to the university because this is something that is happening to you. And you don't have to make this as a task. But I would like you to make a reflection, to think a little bit how it is to be a university student in Macau. Better, I would like you to think about what changed in your life between being a high school student or being now a university student. What is different now in your relation to the professors, the relation with friends, with the family, the type of classes, the requirements? What you think that are the main differences? You don't have to do this as an assignment for evaluation, but we'll talk a little bit about this on Monday. But talking about the university, I would like to make it very, very clear that education is really, really important. To continue to study, to have a higher education, including to have a bachelor's and a master's degree, can make really a difference in the life of someone. These graphs that you have here show how the unemployment rate has a negative correlation with um, education. That means that the higher the education, the lower the unemployment rate. On the other hand, it has a positive correlation with the weekly earnings of people. This means that, as you can see, the higher the qualification, the higher the weekly earning, the amount of money that a person might get. So these graphs clearly show how important it is to study. And you are doing your bachelor's degree. And for me, it's really important for you to think that indeed you should consider this as only one of the steps of your education. So after this, it will be important for you to continue improving in order to guarantee that you might have a stable job and you have a better paid job too. When we talk about being a university student, one important aspect and there is lots of literature about this, is about students' adjustment and adaptation to university life. Indeed, the studies are showing systematically that to be a year one student in university is a huge challenge to many people. And many studies are showing that to be a year one student in university is related with aspects like loneliness, anxiety, depression, all related to the experience of being in a university. I don't know how it was that process. You are now in year two, but it will be also good to think about how it was your process of adaptation to the university. And more than that, what were the coping skills that you used to survive and to adapt to the university. Yes, coping skills. Let me see if I can write here. Yeah, it's not easy to write with coping. Yeah, coping skills. And indeed, the studies are showing that those students who can better adapt to the university are those who, first, they are able to make friends in the university. Those who can establish and build good relationship with the colleagues and make really friends, those have a better adaptation. Also, those who can experience academic success. The studies are showing that the students who can succeed and have good grades in the university, but they can adapt easier. But that is also because they are more able to ask for help, to communicate with the professors, not just because they are better students. It's also because they are more engaged, humble, and they can ask for help. Finally, one important factor to contribute for adaptation in the universities is integrating into campus life. And indeed, this is something that we could think a bit more about this. One of the ideas that I have is that in USA, the integration of our students in campus life is not that good. Even the survey that has been the surveys that are being done in USA always are showing that usually the students don't participate that much in the extracurricular activities in the and other aspects of campus life. And indeed, this is something that maybe we need to improve to help the integration of the students in campus life. I also know that many of you and many of the students in USA, they have other activities outside university, and it might not be that easy to participate in the clubs, in the activities, in the social activities that are being organized. But indeed, the studies are showing that those students that participate are participating, for instance, in the Students' Union. They are being working as student ambassadors in different services or participate in clubs. They can really adjust better to the life of being a university student. On the other hand, on the opposite, um, there another phenomenon that is really known in universities is the dropout rates. So the phenomenon that indeed there are students who will never finish the university, and the main reasons that usually are in the cause for students to drop out are finances, when the students don't have enough money to pay the fees, or difficulties in conciliate job and university life. Indeed, the studies are showing that some students, they also have to work in order to pay their fees, and it's not easy to conciliate this. Another aspect is related to life transitions. For instance, marriage, birth of a child, or death of a parent. When these life transitions will oblige the students to assume different responsibilities or more responsibilities, and with that, they are not available anymore to dedicate the necessary time for the studies. Finally, another reason is academic difficulties. Indeed, the studies are showing that students with academic difficulties are at higher risk for dropout because indeed the level of difficulty of university will increase. You are in year 1, 2. I believe that you already feel a little bit that things are a bit more difficult now, but next year, year 3 and year 4, the things will become even more difficult and you will have challenges, and this is expected to happen. So I would like to warn those of you who have academic difficulties that it's important for you to ask for help. It's important for you the earliest possible to work hard and to rely on your professors so you can overcome those difficulties and you can conclude your studies. Another important life event, as I told you, in the life of adults is to have the first job. And indeed, everything related to work and career is very important for the adult's identity. Indeed, we adults, we build ourselves as human beings also based in our profession. What we are is also what our profession. And this will become a core dimension of being an adult. The first aspect that I would like to highlight, but I think that we will talk more about this in other modules, is about the choice of a career, the moment in which we decide what we will do when we grow up. And this gentleman, Ginsberg, defined, created a theory, defines three main stages. First, a fantasy period. This is something that happens in middle childhood, in which students think about different activities, mostly based in fantasies. For instance, if you are here in Portugal and you ask any boy around 9, 10 years old, most of them they say that they want to be football players like Cristiano Ronaldo. They have fantasies about what will be a good job. Then we have a stage 2, more or less in adolescence, named tentative period. As I told you, um, in adolescence, uh, adolescents start to create the ability to generate possibilities. They start to think about different possibilities for the future. I told you about this temporal perspective of future. So, because they can think about different possibilities of future, and because they start to make evaluations and judgments about their own abilities and interests, they can start to think about different things that they can do. So, to explore possibilities is a very important aspect of adolescence. That's why adolescence is one key period to help students to make career counseling. It's an important moment for them to make decisions. But finally, a stage 3 realistic period is a period in which the adults really define what they will do based on their actual experience, based on indeed what is happening with them in this specific moment, related to the opportunities they have, related to the training and the skills they developed. And more than that, it's a moment in which they will narrow their choices and they will make a commitment. I told you when we talked about the status of identity of James Marcia that commitment is a very important aspect for adulthood. And indeed, a commitment with a career, with a profession, is also something really important that we do in adulthood. So, the studies are showing that from 20 to 40 years old is exactly what we can call a period of career consolidation. Many adults invest a lot of energy in their careers in this period. Indeed, for most of the adults, this is the work, is the place or the activity in which they spend more time during their adult lives. And the, if you think a little bit, this is really, really important because in this interval from 20 to 40, if you can imagine, most of us will spend most of the time, most of our life being prepared or preparing ourselves for work or doing work. And this is really, really challenging. And this is particularly challenging for women because of maternity. Many women nowadays they have to struggle this thing of becoming mothers uh, or invest in their careers. And indeed, Macau doesn't have a very supportive system for motherhood, and this is something that should be improved. And about work, there are one important question that we can make, which is why do people work? Why is it important for people to work? I know that you already talked about motivation, that we can distinguish the motives that we have between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And indeed, extrinsic motivation is one of the main motivations for adults to work, to get money. Indeed, even for me, well, now I'm in Portugal, but I'm working in one university in Macau exactly because there I can have a better salary, I can have more money, and I can provide a better life to my kids and to my family. So indeed, this extrinsic motivation is part of working. But that is not enough. People should have other motivations. Indeed, if I'm there working in the university, it's also because I have aspirations, because I feel that I'm doing something valuable. I feel that I'm contributing for the development of the Macau society, and I feel well with the fact that I'm feeling that I'm making some difference. These are intrinsic motivations. Besides that, people, adults, they find other reasons to join work, namely these three that I'm talking here. A sense of personal identity. As I told you, to be a university professor is part of my identity. When I introduce myself as a human being, as an individual, but to be a psychologist initially, and now to be a university professor is really something related to my identity, to the person I am. Besides that, work is related to social life. Many people, many adults, because they spend most of the time in work and they stop to have time. Most of the adults, most of the time is work and family. And friends will go to secondary plan. So most of the adults, they create their social networks around work. Many adults, they have friends uh, in workplace, and most of the social activities in which they participate are related to social activities promoted by work. Besides that, work might also be related to social status. For people, a profession that you have is related to the evaluation that the society make about the role of the person, the role that that person has in the society, and that might contribute to different social status for people. Another important concept when we talk about work or job is about satisfaction. Because we spend so much time in work, it's important that we feel happy and satisfied there. So there are different aspects related to satisfaction in job. And indeed, when in the future you will work in adults, this is always one aspect that you should be really attentive. In which way people feel satisfied with their jobs. And here I made a summary of the most important factors related to job satisfaction. What are the aspects that might appear in the work that might be more related with satisfaction? And I highlighted here the status of the job, if we feel that I'm doing something important. Um, the job stress, if I feel that I have autonomy and that my supervisors are not always teasing me and looking at what I'm doing. But also when we feel that our ideas and opinions are valid in work, we also feel satisfied. When we feel that we are having a job with some variety, requiring different things. In China, the studies are showing that income uh, and education are related with health. Indeed, prestige related to job is very important for Chinese people. And the studies are showing, including that people with higher uh, rated professions, they can have higher income and they can live longer, having more prestige and have higher social positions in the Chinese society. So if work is important for adults all over the world, the studies are showing that for Chinese people, the prestige related to work is even more important. So I would like also to reflect a little bit with you about the different professions that you think that you perform in the future. What you think that you'll do in the future? How can you see yourself being a professional in the future? And what kind of prestige do you think that these works that you have in the future might have in Macau? Let's discuss a little bit about this. Another aspect related to job is when we don't have a job, is the unemployment and career transitions. When someone has a job and for some reason they start not having a job. And indeed, when this happens in middle age, after 14 years old, so when we talk about middle age, we are talking about 40. So when we have a career transition around 40 years old, this is very difficult to deal for adults. And there are two main reasons for people to change career. We can have involuntary career reasons. So we have to change job but not because we want. And that might happen for two main reasons. First, because our skills will become obsolete. And this happens when people doesn't have a proper lifelong training. When we are stopped, we start working and we don't try to reach new skills. And at some point of life, the job market are demanding new skills and you don't have it. That's why it's really important for adults to keep studying and to update their skills so they will continue to be valuable for their job. Or it can also happen for economic conditions that the job will be eliminated. As you can imagine, these involuntary career changes might be very, very harmful for the development of an adult. But people can also change career for other reasons because they want for fulfillment to feel that I'm doing something that I like more or something that I consider that is more important for my own personal development. This can also happen. And usually when people changes for these reasons, uh, people can improve. And this can be related also with satisfaction in life. So, as I told you, when we lost the job because we don't want, when this is involuntary career changing, this is related with problems in adults, with levels of anxiety, depression, even substance use, namely alcohol, um, and also changes in family relationships. When one adult loses his job, this is related with more conflict in the families and including the increase in separation and divorce. Uh, and so losing a job is really a risk factor for family functioning. And you as a psychologist should be very attentive to this. And of course, when someone loses his job and doesn't want to, this will have significant effects in the self-esteem of the individual. So this is very important for us to promote coping skills again. If someone has good coping skills, good strategies to face adversity and difficulties, they can overcome the difficulties of this uh, involuntary career change. And you, as psychologists, you can and you should work on this. But And now pay attention to what I'm telling you. Work is very important in adults' life. We all know that. And it's so important that sometimes people, adults, they forget to have their own leisure time. That's why in this class, I also would like to highlight the importance of leisure time for adults. So the task number 15 that I would like you to do is to make a brainstorm about what you think that adults do in their free time. Look around you, your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, aunts. What you look around and tell me what they do when with their free time, and what are the differences that you find between they, already middle adults, and yourself as early or young adults. So think a little bit about what is the free time of the adults you know. And let's reflect about that. Why? Because the studies are showing that most of the adults, what they do more is to watch TV. Watch television as a passive activity occupies most of the free time of adults. Other adults, they talk about practicing sports, and others to have some civic participation. For instance, to join town committees or associations or some volunteer work. These are the three main free time activities that the studies are identifying. But why I'm talking about this? Because indeed, most of the studies are showing that the way the adults spend their free time is related to mental health of adults, but also with mental health in late adulthood. Sometimes we are so busy during our adult life from 20 to 40 years old, and we forget to do the things that are good for us. And but most of the time we are not aware of it, and it's later when we are elderly and we'll look back to our life that we'll see, come on, I spent most of my life just working, and I didn't do anything for me. So indeed, my dear students, I would like to highlight the importance of, even in uh, early and middle adulthood, in which work is so important, is also essential for you as adults to have quality time for yourselves, to continue doing things that you like and you appreciate. That is important for your mental health in the present as adults, but also that will affect directly your mental health when you'll be elderly. So if you want to be an elder person with higher quality of life and better mental health condition, it's important for you to have an active life and to have a proper free time now that you are young adults and adults. But of course, for that to have free time, we need time. That requires time. And indeed, most of the people are always in a rush, in a very huge speed, going from one place to another. This is where the concept of pace of life appears. The pace of life, the rhythm of your life. If we can live quiet, calm, with time to do things, or if we are in a rush, doing things in a very fast way. And there is an index for this pace of life, and here in this list you can check what are the fastest cities in the world and the slowest. You can see, for instance, that living in Dubai or Cairo or in Taipei is really slower. People have more time to do things than living in Singapore, that it seems that is, at least this moment, the city in the world with the fastest pace of life. So it will be important for people to be more quiet and to have time for themselves. And indeed, one of the advantages of middle adulthood and reaching this period of life in which we are around 40 years old, when children start to leave home and to be more autonomous. This is a new opportunity for adults to have more time for themselves and for some quality leisure. For this is an important moment in adults because indeed this moment of life in middle adulthood, new opportunities might appear. Of course, that later, when we talk about psychosocial development, this we heard about this middle age crisis. This moment, this transition to middle adulthood in which children leaves home and we have more time for ourselves, can bring also some challenges and crises. But is a moment of opportunity indeed for these adults to have more time for themselves. So, to finish today's class, I would like also for you to think a little bit about this question. How it is your life? Do you live in a rush? What is the importance of leisure in your life? Can you keep some moment for yourself to do the things that you really enjoy and like? As I told you, this is important not only for your 2 days, but also for your future mental health. So think about this. Do you have time for leisure? And on Monday, we will talk a little bit about this. Thank you very much for your attention and see you on Monday, my dear students. Goodbye.